Okay, so it's a bit of a mess, but you now have the engine out. Obviously we're very tight for space in here, so we're doing the best we can, so he can quite happily sit there. This obviously gives us full access to this part of the chassis. So this is the inside edge of that rail. You can see now I've cleaned it back. It's actually not as bad as I thought. It's still bad enough, but it's not as bad as I thought. Obviously we've got a reasonable sized patch to put in here. And then going back here, we've just got some pinholes. There's a patch there. And there's another small patch in here just underneath where the gearbox sits. So the previous owner has put a patch on here. You can just see the edge of the weld there. So there's a couple patches here. So I think what he's done is he's patched it without cutting out the old rust, and obviously that old rust is climbing from the bottom up. Naturally, obviously, when you get any moisture inside, it's going to settle to the bottom and it's going to eat its way up, and that's basically what's happened here. So there's bad metal in behind there. It's starting to creep its way up. All the rest of the metal from here up is good. I've been around this with a panel hammer and bashed it, and it's okay. It is literally just this bottom inside edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a strip in across here. I'm going to put another strip in all the way down to here. Then I'm going to put a slightly taller strip in across here, and then a decent sized patch here. This is where the bottom of the wishbone bolts straight through. So obviously that needs to be, needs to be as strong as we can get it. Obviously it still needs welding on the other side and the underside, but for the inside edge, again, I'm going to put a nice thick plate in here. Cut down around that hole, come down, and then I'll put another plate in the corner there just to make sure it's nice and secure in there. So we'll get that inside edge done. Then I'll stand this up, the whole chassis up against the wall, and then I can do the outside edge. Sorry, I'll probably do the outside edge of where it is. Then stand it up, and then I can do the patches on the bottom. The other rail is fine, so the right hand side of the car is absolutely fine, and from the gearbox mount back where the prop shaft is there, that's also fine. Also from that front wishbone forward is fine. So we are literally dealing with a section from there to there. It's that part. So as you can see, I've already buzzed it back. Got the old wire wheel on the drill. That thing works a charm. You've really got to lean into it and work it hard. But those work really, really well, and they're quite cheap. They're only about £1 each, so they're, I'll bet, much better than a flappy paddle, because obviously with the wire wheel you can get right down into these corners, which you can't do with the flappy, depending on the shape you're dealing with. So yeah, if you're doing the same thing, get some of those brass wire wheels. They make it a lot easier. And obviously now we're dealing with nice clean bare metal as well, so hopefully our welds will be good. So I'm going to get on with cutting some panels and start welding this bad boy up. Okay, so it's been a busy 24 hours. So what we've done is been in and we've started putting patches in. So as you can see, there's a small square patch here, there's one here with a U shape on it just so I can get the wishbone bolt through. Then we've got a slightly larger patch here, and then we've got a very long thin patch which goes all the way along out to there. Because again, all those pinholes were along the bottom edge and the top edge was okay. So we've zapped those patches in, tacked them on first, seamed them up, and then what I've done is just gone over with a bit of chemical metal just to sort of get into any pinholes there may be. The plan is to then fill this chassis rail with old engine oil and give it a good slosh around. Obviously when they rust from the inside out. So we just want to make sure there's no more moisture in there or anything that's going to travel. No point cutting the rust out and then leaving rusty metal in there because it's just going to spread. So yeah, go around with a bit of chemical metal. That's just going to add in. I mean, it's not going to do any harm, put it that way. It's not going to give it a huge amount of strength, but what it will do is fill all those little pinholes that you inevitably get in your welds so that oil won't splooge out all over the place. And then I can just simply go over that and undercoat it with the black metallic hammerite, which is what I've done on the rest of the chassis. So that's that side, inner edge there, all done. That's a big chunk of it. I've also haven't cut it back yet, but also done this side as well. So you can see I've just put some chemical metal. So we've got a plate in here, that's gone, or again, around that wishbone hole into the corner, and I've actually bent 10mm on the edge there, so it goes on to that outrigger just to give that a bit of strength. Again, that's been seam welded on, and then I've just put a bit of chemical metal, so I'll buzz that back in a second and then paint that up. And then what we'll do in the next couple of days is we'll try and stand this frame up. I'll probably have to take that wheel off so I can get it up close to that right hand wall, which will then allow me to flip it up against the left hand wall. So I can flip the chassis up against the wall, balance it on the two wheels, and then obviously I can get to the underside of that rail and then put in some nice big patches all the way from that wishbone all the way down to that second outrigger where the prop shaft starts, because that's where there's a few patches on it already, but they're not very good, so I'd rather just buzz them off now, cut the metal back and put some fresh patches on just so I know it's good. So yeah, that's a decent chunk of the welding done. I'm probably over halfway with the welding now. Problem is, of course, now I've completely run out of gas. That was a brand new bottle and I've used it all. So back to the gas shop, get some new gas. So yeah, we're getting there. So managed to get the frame up on its side, leave two wheels on, take the other ones off. So the bottom edge, i.e. the right hand side of the car, is okay. I've been down it with a panel hammer and it's okay. The left hand side of the car, the top edge here, as you can see, is the one that's had the issues. So there's a couple of plates here that need putting back down better. This was some of my first attempts at welding, and basically I didn't have the material clean enough or the welder hot enough. So it hasn't taken very well, so they'll both be coming off and going back on again. This is the overrun to the plate I did yesterday, so this is the wishbone bolt. So what I've done is I've kept that plate long and then bent it around 90 degrees. So this gives me a nice surface to actually put a new plate onto, and obviously just provides more strength in that corner as well, rather than just having a butt joint at 90 degrees. So a bit more strength there, that's never going to be a bad thing. So we'll buzz that down, get that all nice and clean. These are the existing plates that the previous owner put on. We've got 1, 2 and a long one, 3 up to here. Now the plates themselves don't sound too bad. I've been down them with a hammer and they're okay, but this one is starting to lift here. I did stick a screwdriver under it and jam it and lift it up and just see how well it was attached. And as you can see, it isn't attached very well. So I don't need to clean the metal up well enough under there. So I'm going to cut that one back a little bit, clean it up, stick these ones back down. And then down here, where we get to the second outrigger, you can see where his old plate, where the new plate ends and the old frame begins. We've got holes all, again, I've been down this with a hammer already, and we can see we've got holes all along it. So the edges are fine. It's where it comes around onto this flat edge, which makes sense because obviously if you're going to get moisture sitting inside a frame, this is the bottom, so the moisture is going to sit on the bottom, it's going to rot the bottom out, and then it's going to climb up through the steel. So it's the bottom edge that's gone. So the inside edge is now done, the outside edge is now done. We're now doing the big bit, which is the bottom edge. I'm going to need to get more gas for the welder because I have used almost an entire bottle already. But there we go, them's the brakes. It's either that or I go and buy a new chassis. So, you know, I'm trying to do the best with what I got. You can see just by looking at the metal, it's very dimply. So it's not amazing. Luckily it is box section rather than a C channel. So you've still got 3 good sides on there for the steel. But that being said, obviously I want to cut this back, clean it up and get some fresh plate on there. I've got some nice 2.5mm steel which will go in there lovely, and there's a couple of small holes just as we go down here. One there, one there, a couple of little ones that just need filling up, and this bottom edge, this looks like a new panel as well, he's put on there. But again, I've been down it with a hammer and it seems alright. Yeah, so it's obviously had a lot of work on it previously, and however it's been sat, that side, that left hand side, for some reason is the one that's gone. But there we go, so I see my future
It has more cutting, more welding. So I've just got to get on with it basically. Let's go. Well, we're still going with the welding. It feels like I've been welding this car forever now. It's been about 2 weeks, but it feels like forever. I've still got to do these seams, I've got to cut these panels back slightly better, and I've got another panel to go in the front there, and obviously clean and tidy up the welds. So yeah, it just seems to be going on forever. And then we need to finish welding in those ones, weld up all the gaps, and then give it the same treatment. It's a lot of welding. Okay guys, after 2 weeks of welding, it's finally done. All the patches are in, seamed up, chemical meld just to make sure there's no pinholes in there, and then paint it in our favourite Hammerite metallic black. I don't ever want to see a welder again. But hopefully that is it done. I think I'll still keep an eye out for another chassis in case one comes up cheap. It's obviously you know, completely solid all the way through. It's never had any patches put into it. But yeah, it's solid and that's all I'm worried about. But it's been a huge amount of work. You know, the problem you have when you're buying cars like this is there's always a risk involved. I mean, there's a risk involved in buying any second-hand car because you just don't know. You can have a cursory look at it, you can take it for a test drive, you can look at the previous MOTs, that kind of thing, to get an idea, but you never really know. And especially with old project cars like this. I mean, this one was sat in the corner of a barn. It had boxes and stuff all over it. You could barely even get to the car to have a look at it. You know, we gave it a cursory poke over and it seemed, you know, for the most part to be okay. But I've been led to believe that with all cars like this, once you start poking and prodding around in them, you always find bits that have either just been filled over by the previous owner, or perhaps the previous owner wasn't aware of. You know, like I say, this one's had patches put on the chassis, and then it was put into storage for 10 years. So in those 10 years, it's obviously, you know, more rust is going to accumulate again, especially down here in our salty sea air. So yeah, it's always a bit of a gamble. You know, you pay your money, you take your chance, and that's all there is to it, really. I can't grumble about it. If I was that bothered, I would have stipulated that we dragged it out of the shed, flipped it over, and I went down it with a hammer to make sure there was no welding. If I'd known how much welding there was in it now, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But I bought it, here it is, it's done now, and now I can finally start to put it back together, get the engine back in, and get the body out. And I must admit, I'm really looking forward to actually seeing something other than this bloody chassis which I've been staring at for the last 2 months or so. But, you know, if you're going to go to all that hassle of stripping it down and rebuilding each part as you go, you'd be stupid not to flip it up, have a look and go around the underside. The fact is, if I hadn't gone underneath it and had a look around underneath it, I'd be driving around with loads of holes down the chassis, not knowing about it. You know, so at least now I know. I've put patches over, it's been reinforced to the best of my ability. Yeah, so I'm glad I have, but it's been a huge amount of work. It's an eye-opener for me. As my first restoration project, this is a huge eye-opener for me. And you see now why garages charge so much, because the labour involved, if I was to top up how many hours I've put into this already and charge it at a garage labour rate, you know, somewhere from 40 to 80 pounds an hour, the bill already would be tens of thousands of pounds, and we haven't even started on the bodywork, electrics or anything else yet. It is literally just a rolling chassis, so yeah, that's why it takes so long. But again, I'm here to learn, and one thing I am doing is learning. But I'm really happy to put this one finally to bed. Thank you.